Hi, I'm Faith Pinot from LA Times Studios in Washington, D.C. Here are some of today's top stories from the Los Angeles Times. European leaders are closing ranks around Ukraine after a surprise U.S. peace plan left them on the sidelines. According to reporters, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom held a joint call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky Friday, promising what they called full and unchanged support as the war drags on. The reassurance comes as officials scramble to make sense of a 28-point U.S. proposal, one that appears to line up with several of Russia's demands. The plan would force Ukraine to make concessions that Zelensky has repeatedly said are off limits, including giving up territory, limiting its military, and slowing its path to NATO. It also offers only limited security guarantees, something that has alarmed European allies. Ukrainian lawmaker Alexander Merezhko said Ukraine wouldn't accept the current deal. Here's what he told a reporter in Kyiv Friday.
Well, this plan is definitely a non-starter, but I don't rule out that it might be part of the Trump's game. He usually, it's kind of typical style for him, for his deal making. He starts with something absolutely absurd, ludicrous, which causes shock, and then he becomes more reasonable. I don't know. But we're discussing the text which I saw today, and it's totally unacceptable because it starts, first of all, with a confirmation of Ukraine's sovereignty, and all other points are in contradiction. They're against Ukraine's sovereignty. They undermine Ukraine's sovereignty. They're going, for example, they violate territorial integrity of Ukraine. They violate our sovereign rights. So basically, they, if implemented, they create conditions for Ukraine to be destroyed by Putin.
EU officials shared his concern, adding that a bad deal for Ukraine threatens broader European security, and said any peace agreement must include Ukraine directly. But on Thursday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt rejected claims that the plan was one-sided. Here's what she told reporters.
President Trump has made it very clear since day one, and even on the campaign trail, that he wants to see this war come to an end. He has grown increasingly frustrated with both sides of this war, Russia and Ukraine alike, for their refusal to commit to a peace agreement. But nevertheless, the president and his national security team are steadfast in seeing this war come to an end, to end the killing and deliver on the president's promise. Special Envoy Witkoff, Marco Rubio, have been working on a plan quietly for about the last month. They've been engaging with both sides, Russia and Ukraine, equally to understand what these countries would commit to in order to see a lasting and durable peace.
Zelensky says he's reviewing the proposal and expects to speak with President Trump soon. He thanked the U.S. for its efforts, but made it clear that Ukraine is working to protect what he called its principled positions. Russia, meanwhile, offered only a vague reply, saying it has not formally received the document. Meanwhile, on the ground, the violence continues. On Friday, a Russian glide bomb hit a residential neighborhood in Zaporozhye, killing 5 people. Just 2 days after strikes in western Ukraine killed 31 people, including 6 children, and injured 94 others. And President Trump announced plans to reopen large parts of the Pacific Ocean to new offshore drilling. According to Haley Smith, it would be the first time in more than 40 years that oil companies could bid on drilling rights off of California's coast. The Interior Department rolled out the plan Thursday. It includes more than 34 offshore leases through 2031 and covers more than 1 billion acres of federal waters along the West Coast. The goal, they say, is to boost domestic oil production and replace President Biden's far smaller leasing program. Now, California has fought this fight before. The state hasn't allowed new offshore drilling in federal waters since the early 1980s. A big reason can be traced back to the 1969 Santa Barbara spill, which coated beaches and helped launch the modern environmental movement. Climate activists say this plan brings those risks roaring back. Oceana called it an oil spill nightmare and says the expansion could threaten coastal businesses that rely on clean water and tourism. But oil and gas groups see it differently. They argue the country needs more offshore exploration to meet long-term energy demands. Federal estimates show about 10 billion barrels of potential oil off the West Coast, most of it near Southern California. Still, analysts say companies may not rush in, pointing to tough politics and limited resources. In the meantime, California leaders are already pushing back. Governor Gavin Newsom blasted the plan as careless and said the state will use every tool available to block new drilling. Before the program moves forward, the Interior Department said it will consider public input, and a 60-day public comment period begins once the proposal is published Monday. That's it for now. To read these stories and more, be sure to subscribe to the LA Times.